Welcome to From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast dedicated to discussing the challenges and providing tips for women in tech leadership. Hi, I'm your host, Limor Bergman-Gross, and in each episode, we'll hear from other successful women in tech, sharing their stories, insights, and advice. Join us as we empower each other to reach our full potential in the tech industry. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. And actually, we are recording today. It's December 31st. It's the end of 2023. But by the time this episode goes out, it will already be 2024. So Happy New Year, everyone. And today, I called the episode From Sand Dunes to Silicon Valley. And I'm super honored to have here today Monica Bajaj. And Monica will talk about her journey of moving from the sand dunes of India to the heart of Silicon Valley. And Monica, for those who don't know, is the VP of Engineering at Okta. So hi, Monica, welcome.
Thank you, Limor, and a very happy new year. We are almost, what an honor, like December 31st, ending the year with such a spectacular podcast. So looking forward.
Thank you. And thank you for honoring me and speaking with me at the last day of the year.
Yes.
So Monica, let's start. And maybe we can start with your background, with your childhood in India. So can you share our listeners a little bit about it?
Definitely. So I was born, as Limor pointed out, sand dunes. I was born in a city called Jodhpur in state Rajasthan, which is the northern west part of India. And it is famous for its sand dunes. Apart from that, it is also famous for its food, colors, clothing, and whatnot, and just the cultural traditions. So I was born there, and I grew up in Indore, which is another famous city of India, cleanest city of India, they call it, and the food street capital of India as well. So as you can see, I'm a big into foodie, grew up in India. But my relation to sand dunes has been very tight. And the reason is every summer I used to go back to my grandparents and be there for the summers. Summers used to be really, really hot, as you can see. But my best education was done by my mom and my grandfather, who was himself a teacher in English. And that's where my language skills, my writing skills got developed. And we used to study in early morning, like sometimes around 5 a.m., and go to the terrace and study. So that's one tie. The second tie is life, as they say, life is a full circle. After I finished my undergrad in engineering, my first job I got in the same city where I was born. So I went back and I served as assistant professor in computer science in the city of Jodhpur at MBM Engineering College for 2 years. So that first job, as you know, like is always, always special in your heart. And so that's why I call it as my journey started from there. And then rest is all history. I moved around and came back, came to the Silicon Valley.
Wow, incredible. And you said about your mother and father, how they kind of distilled the learning of the language in you, which is wonderful. What other kind of values and beliefs did your family, particularly your mother, instill in you that have guided your life?
Definitely. So my parents play a big role. Until today, they play a big role. I'm very fortunate to have them around me. Number one is education. Education is the key that was instilled in us growing up as kids. We can cut down on other resources like clothing and other brands, whatever kids get these days. But education is, we will never compromise. So my dad was a professor, and then he started working in a private sector. He was a scientist. And my mom was like homemaker, and she basically took all her experiences and instilled into us, me and my brother, that why education is so important, why independence is so important. And being, she she did her master's in economics, but she always wanted that her daughter is independent. And so the two things were there, education and independence. When you become an adult, you are able to take care of your own things by yourself. She did not have any expectation, or my parents did not have any expectation that, oh, you should become an engineer or a doctor, but just become independent. And the path was created by surroundings and by learnings. And those days, internet, email was not available, to be honest. Like phones were not available. So everything was either library or talking to your friends and learning about it. And that's where, it all started. And then when I finished my undergrad, I wanted to do my master's, and I went to master's at IIT Bombay, worked in industry for 1 to 2 years, and then moved to US. But even coming to US I'm very fortunate. I was single that time. And of course, at a stage, Indian culture is always about like, getting married, you have done your master's. But my parents were like, okay, you go and fulfill your dreams. So they were very big support, for me to try on new things, and just having that faith and trust in me that I can do these things. So that was definitely the muscle behind where I am today, and it continues to be.
Incredible. And yes, and you mentioned education and dependence, which
Mhm.
obviously both of them played in your journey, right? You pursued your undergrad, your master degree, and then independence. You decided to kind of leave the nest and move to the Silicon Valley, which is very different from where
And
you
trust
grew
me,
up.
yeah, trust me, it was very, very hard because, in full disclosure, sometimes you take that leap, but in your heart, that what if it doesn't work out, right? There is that little fear, but you cannot tell anybody. And I had exactly the same thing because I was coming to a country where I did not know anybody. This was my first flight, forget about domestic, but first flight ever. So
Wow.
just flying in the airplane with a limited pocket money. And what if it doesn't work? What will I do? Right? So all those questions were in mind, but I was holding on to them and said, like, have faith, have faith. And because of the support I had back at home, and it was just the faith, I didn't want to take any, monetary benefit from my parents because, they had worked really hard to help me where I am today. So that was another, thing in my back of my mind that I am going to be independent. I will make it, I'll survive, right? I'll figure this out by myself. So that grit was there in me throughout this process. Until today, it is like that. So I'm very fortunate to, be around them with them.
Yeah, you are, because this is not trivial to move, to do such a big move by yourself. What was the motivation for moving to the US, by the way?
Well, again, this is one thing which I did follow the herd, kind of. During those days, if you are coming to US was a really big charm. And many of my friends who, either went to came to US after their undergrad or after their masters. And because I went to IIT Bombay, one of the best schools and very well recognized. And I went there. It was a big exposure for me. I learned a lot in these 18 months. I had 18 months I spent for my master's, and it was a game changer for my life. Not just technically, I built my skills, but just how to basically stand out in a group of people who are smarter than you, right? And what does it take? Because earlier it was all about like you get the best grades, you are the best of the best, but now you are sitting in a group of people who are best of the best, and how to learn from them. That was the game changer for me, that you will always have people better than you. The best part you can do is learn from them and be a part of it, right? And so that was a learning experience I had. I had amazing professors there. I'm still in touch with them, and lots of learning went in there. And then once you are into that exposure of resources and knowledge and, you know, more avenues, I decided like, let me explore the world a little bit. And Coming to US was definitely everybody's dream because opportunities were there, resources were there. These were two things which were lacking in India at that time. Today, I would say it's at par. So that's why I said followed the herd during those days, those years, and everybody came. Uh, the difference is like I'm still here. Many of my friends went back, some came back. So it's it's whatever works for you, that kind of thing. But that was big.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was the biggest reason.
Yeah. And how was it like being an Indian woman in the US? You said you didn't know anyone. How was it like starting to work in the US?
It was not easy. uh, because if you do not know anybody, you first of all, no matter, I mean, English I knew very well, so language was not a barrier, which was really, really helpful. But just the cultural norms, the style of working, how people react. There were a lot of instances where, you had to just, and then, when you are in a different country, you try to fit in. And I did the same thing for a while, but then it starts becoming very, painful for you because you are losing your identity. And so I realized like I need to take a step back. I need to be who I am and I need to bring my best out of it, right? And one thing which quote which I always keep in mind and I have put in front of my desk also is like that smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. So I knew that I'll have to struggle as a woman, woman of color, and women in technology, right? So there were like multiple barriers. There was no concept of women in tech or diversity or inclusiveness. Nobody used to talk about all those terms, which are very, very common these days. And sometimes, we over index as well. But yes, there is a need for it. Um, I would say, in summary, met some tremendous bosses who helped me grow, but during the later part of my career, I would say. But there were many people who pulled me down as well. And I figured out the way to navigate through challenges is the only way is like having faith in yourself. That's really important. You will always have people around you who will help you or, not help you, that kind of thing. But make what your conscience allows, right? That's really, really important. Do not try to suffer because when you suffer, your family suffers and it impacts your day-to-day productivity. And that's where I made my calls whenever I hit that wall and decided to move.
Yes, and I completely agree with you that there will always be people that are supportive, but there will also always be people that I guess they are energy vampires, or I don't know if there's a better word for that. I'm not saying that they are necessarily bad people,
Yeah,
but a lot of times they bring the negative energy.
correct,
They pull you down.
correct.
Sometimes they don't try to do that on purpose.
Yes, that is true too. Sometimes they do not know, they're very ignorant. But words are very powerful. The way I look at it is use your words wisely. And because you do not know, I mean, people always remember. I still have those instances where I was put down, and those are like bad memories you always keep with you whenever it triggers. Those are your triggers because people always remember how were they treated at different moments. And you want to make sure you don't repeat those moments with anybody else around you because you don't want to be one of them.
Sure. And you mentioned that you knew when was the time to move on. So, how you as a woman, let's say I'm a woman and I
Mhm.
have, I have the people that supports me. Some people are bringing me down. How do I know that it's time for me to move on versus, well, maybe I need to, as you said, right? I need to sail and navigate this sea, this
So,
storm.
yeah, so it depends on the criticality of the situation, right? How much, and it varies from person to person. It also varies what is your liability at? It's very easy to say, right? I mean, that move on. But people, we are all working. We are all working to take care of our families, our kids. And sometimes it's just a matter of time. Do you pull the trigger now or do you pull the trigger later? Right. And I had an instance where one of my supervisors, I had my regular, this is the story which I can share is I had my regular one-on-one with him. And while we were talking, he was like, oh, I want everybody to be at 8:30 in the morning for the meetings. And I'm like, hey, I cannot. I have kids to drop to school and my husband travels. And he was like, well, I have pets. I leave them alone and they figure it out. So you can do that too. And that was the triggering point for me. And I didn't take any action. I just was in tears, but I held myself. That's another thing I will tell every woman is hold on to your emotions when you are at work, because I'm not saying don't be emotional, but never in those meetings, because I personally, for me, it becomes a sign of weakness for us at times. So I walked out and that was it. And I'm like, I'm not going to work either for him or work for this company. And luckily, in 2 weeks, I had another offer, but I was in full force at that time. So the point is, it's the triggering point which helps you understand whether you really want to work, because it's a day-to-day affair, right? You don't want to be in a situation you bring all those bad energy back home. It hurts you and your people around you. The effect is people forget that the days of separating work and family is gone long time back, and in tech it was never there, to be honest. It's just a matter of being in the office and being in at home. But after COVID, there is no separation, so it's better to be in a healthy environment and make those choices. And sometimes you also get bosses who are ready to listen, right? If something is not working, you have an honest conversation with them. But we all know they are very far and few of those, because it's considered as like, how do you give feedback to your boss? And you need to be very, very thoughtful about it. You need to have that relationship as well in order to do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned several important things here. I mean, I think that sometimes there are cases like you mentioned, this manager that told you about the kids. I mean, this is just so
Mhm.
frustrating that there are people that
Exactly.
even think like that, right? I mean, this is like insane.
Yep.
How can this person? I assume that he didn't have any children, so that's why he was saying,
Exactly.
right? I mean, otherwise, no parents will compare kids to pets. Not that
Exactly.
pets are wonderful, but yes, it's not the same thing.
Exactly.
So when you reach, what I like doing is to think about what can I influence, what can I change.
Mhm.
And in situations like that, when you see someone that, well, you're not going to be able to, if that's how he thinks, obviously it's
Exactly.
emotionally draining, but like even thinking about it without any emotional
Mhm.
baggage, like,
And
well,
now, now I look back, and rather than being emotional, it makes me laugh, to be honest. That
yeah.
how can a person think like this or talk like this?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess in cases that you feel like you can actually influence, as you
Mhm.
said, there are people that may be not so easy to work with, but at least they come with good intention. They are willing to listen, then there's something to work with. But if
Mhm.
people are just the way they are and like, okay, you're here by 8:30 and your kids, like I put my pets at home, your kids can be at home and I don't care, then yeah, maybe there's nothing really you can do regardless of this 8:30 a.m. in the morning or something else.
Correct.
There's nothing you can do. It's my way or the highway. I'm not willing to listen. Well, can't really influence there.
Yes. And all those instances, not to mention, right? I mean, people don't realize that until you go through this, every situation in my journey so far, whether it is good or bad, anything which did not go in favor also taught me a lot of things. Because what it has taught me, that the instances which happened in my journey has taught me one thing, that as a leader, I don't want to be doing those things, because knowingly or unknowingly, it does happen. But it's a reminder, given that I have gone through some of those, and many of us have gone, I'm not the only one, but it's a way of like a checklist in my book. Like, I'm not going to be one of those to do this. So I'm very, very thoughtful about when it comes to family, when it comes to kids, when it comes to, hey, I need to take care of my family. I have this. I'm like, yeah, work can wait. So it's really, really important. And that's my first principle.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, right, since COVID, like the separation between work and life really doesn't exist, or maybe the lines are blurry, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
How do you make it all happen, right? You're in a VP role in a
Mhm,
great company like Okta, and you
mhm,
have a family, you have children.
mhm.
How do you do that? And what kind of advice do you have for other women?
Well, do what works the best for you. Let's, first of all, that's really important because everybody's situation is very different. If I have to put in an order, I would say family first, um, and second is work. That's really, really important. The lesson is once you lose the family, it doesn't come back. Jobs are transitional, so it can come back. The other part is during this mix of, family, work, kids, do not forget about yourself. So constant investing in yourself, whether it is through anything, whatever works, reading or learning, doing podcasts, blogging, name it, right? Anything what you feel you want to do it, take baby steps towards it and figure it out in your schedule. Like I personally keep few hours, on the weekend or on like we are talking today. That's on my list. And of course, I'm going to make it as a priority. So making it as a priority is really important, and you cannot make everything as a priority. Sometimes I make binge watching as my priority, and sometimes I make this as my priority. So carving out certain time, certain hours in a week is very, very important, and they are just for you. Whether it can be for this kind of activities or it can be just going for like, a spa, doesn't matter. But for yourself is really important. And then creating that independence in the family is really important. That when kids grow up and you have your spouse, sharing that workload and asking for help is really important. Initially, when I came from India, right, I mean, Indian culture is very different, right? And but luckily when I came here, and me and my husband worked it out, and we share the low work across the board, and definitely is very helpful, because if you don't ask for help, you don't get help. That's the reality, right? So asking for that is really important, whether it is at work or is at home. Do not hesitate. So I would advise that keep it very simple, make yourself as a priority, but carve out certain time along with other things which you have on your plate.
Yeah, I cannot agree
And you need
more.
to enjoy it. You need to
Yeah.
enjoy it, right? I mean, that's the really part, because if you enjoy it, that energy fuels you back through it. Like I enjoy writing blogs and I enjoy speaking at conferences and doing these podcasts because I feel I'm making an impact through my journey. And if you believe in that for yourself, go and do it, right? I mean, the more you do it, the better you get.
Absolutely. And the more you do for yourself, the better you get for your family. I think this is what
Exactly.
a lot of women don't realize.
Mhm.
And they sacrifice themselves for the sake
Correct.
of their family.
Yeah. And I see that, sometimes my daughter, now she's graduating actually from college and she will be in the workforce. The kind of conversation she has with me, uh, directly or indirectly, she sees me, and she comes and tells me about the things which I do. So I feel like in my heart, I feel like in some form or shape, she is getting some of the things. I'm making an impact um, for her and for the next generation. That is something I really, really want, that the next generation needs to be much stronger because they have a lot of support system. And as women leaders, definitely we can pave the path for them. So that brings the utmost joy for me, that if my next generation is able to stand on their feet and they're smarter, they have a lot of resources, their thought process is really, really, eye-opening sometimes. So that's the best part we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And just want to say, like you mentioned about asking for help.
Mhm.
Um, I would also add higher help because you know, I had a woman that I'm coaching that she felt guilty not preparing lunch for her kids herself, like not cooking for her kids. So she told me, I wake up at 5 a.m. to cook lunch for my kids. So my kids, have home cooked meal. And because I do that, I don't have time for myself. I don't have, because she said, I'm an early riser. I could work out at 5 a.m., but I don't do that because I have to cook. And and it's great to cook for the kids. I'm not saying don't cook, but just balance that. And yeah, it's okay to buy food. It's okay to maybe hire someone to cook for you or hire someone to do your laundry or whatever. I mean, it's okay. Your kids will be happy kids, will get a lot from you if you are happy, even if you
True.
didn't cook them a specific meal.
That's true. And I have been in those situations where you are like family versus going to a gym. And I would say, again, it comes to the priority, right?
Yeah.
Both are equal priorities. And maybe you balance it out, right? Don't go to gym every day, go every other day, cook every other day meal, right? I mean, do some prep, something like that, right? But it's how people manage their time is really, really important. It's all about managing time and priority.
Yes. And they know it's not easy when the kids are young. I've been there
That's true.
too.
Mhm.
But they grow up much faster than we think, right?
Yep. And you will not realize, but kids are the most adaptable, right? I mean, they adapt themselves. I had been in situations when my kids were very little and I used to take conference calls, having them in my lap. Luckily, there was no like Zoom kind of thing, so that was okay. But it was needed to balance between putting them to sleep and having the night calls. It was the need of the hour. And sometimes learn to say no too. That's also important. And I did not know how to say no during that time. But today I have learned again from that lesson, like how to say no and how to create those boundaries that, what works the best, and figure out like how it works between you and the person on the other side, right? I'm not saying it's my way or highway, but learning to say no. Women are very hesitant to say no many times. And it's important because if you do not say no, you cannot put blame on anybody else.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, what kind of tip do you have for women that are not sure how to say no without sounding that are not operative and aggressive?
It depends. Like when you say no, you definitely give them the context why you are saying no is really important. Like at times when I'm unable to attend a meeting, I always tell them like, hey, I have an appointment, right? Which cannot move. Or I have my kids, play I need to attend. So given, if you give the context, and sometimes you don't have to, you can even say like, I have a personal appointment, which I need to take care of it. And obviously you're making it as a priority call, right? And there are times when there are super, super urgent meetings which you have to attend, and either ask them to record, don't attend them, or basically, just balance it out in the sense like, for how long you can be on the call versus you don't have to be further throughout the meeting. So when I say learning to say no is understand whether you are needed. If you are not needed, I normally ask my senior directors or directors to attend that meeting and fill me in later. So that also happens. Uh, But that then comes the power of delegation as well. A lot of times as leaders, you feel like, oh, you need to be in every meeting. And the truth is, you do not need to be. So you have to understand making that call when you say no, are you also doing the delegation so that you don't miss out on things which are important? That's really important part of it. I think
Absolutely.
the context is important.
Yeah. And sometimes it's about saying yes to something else, right? I mean, but
Correct.
okay, what I can do is, I
Yes,
can attend the meeting, maybe not at 7 p.m. because that's the time I'm washing my kids, whatever. I mean, but I can make a later call, or I can be here earlier tomorrow morning. Or sometimes
exactly.
it's about saying no, but in a positive way, what you
Mhm.
can do versus what you cannot do.
That is true. And I do it all the time. Like if I have to take interviews, my mornings are the best time. Like I'm in, full energy in the morning time. I'm an early riser. So I'm okay to take morning calls and do these conversations at even 6 a.m. But I'm not in the best late nights. So I give them that alternatives and figure out, like, as I said, whatever works the best for both the parties.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to ask one more thing before we end the call. So I know that giving back is very important to you and mentorship. So tell us a little bit about that and how it also helped you and enrich your life.
Sure. I would say community and mentorship both are the most gratifying moments if I have to look back of my life. And the reason is it brings so much joy. It's a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And I feel very fortunate that I'm in that position. I never thought about this growing up because I was always on the receiving end. I'm a very curious person and I like to absorb things, like even in our conversations, I'm absorbing like what you are bringing on the table. So that I feel has been a really transformational for me. And today I feel like my personality is somehow shaped with those journeys as well. And if I look at community, what community has given me is like it's a platform, whether it is being a part of any organization or being a part of any meetup. There is so much to learn in these diverse groups. They bring in different perspectives. You are always taking some wisdom out of those people. And most important, you are sitting in a group of like minded people. That's where the energy comes in, and the good energy comes in, the positive energy. It has helped me being more creative, more resilient, and yet be able to show the impact if done with a sense of purpose. It also helped me understand how to make the best in limited resources because not every community has like abundance of resources. So that's the power of community. And if you feel like you're being together we stand together. So it's a sense of pack. That's the way I look at it. When it comes to mentorship, I feel mentorship is not just a word around teaching or sharing your experiences, but it's about engaging yourself with passion. You are revealing your skills and experiences with someone who is hungry to take that as a mentee. And similarly, in those experiences, I learn a lot from my mentees because sometimes, I realize, oh, I have never been into these situations. And it makes me think, what if? So, and I also feel that mentorship does not have to be tied with just a professional world because a lot of times people feel that, oh, mentorship, I'm at work, I need to have a mentor or a mentee, be a mentee. We all have mentors in our lives. Sometimes it is parents are mentors. My grandfather was a big mentor for me growing up, and my mom and my parents, like my dad, both are mentors. I would say, if I have to summarize, my grandfather not only taught me the beauty of literature, but always emphasized to keep things simple, right? Even writings have to be simple so that audience can understand. And my mom always taught me to do two things. One is stay strong and never hesitate to speak up. So that was another way of not holding me back. If something was, I wanted something, go and ask for. Worst case, people will not give you, right? So you will not lose. So it's really important that as a mentor is someone whom you can trust, someone who sees your talent and capability with you, and then you see in yourself, right? That's really important, which helps you articulate it like who you are. So I'm very fortunate I have some mentors like that who give me the right critique. And as a mentee, in order to get the best of this engagement, I would say it is important to keep three things in mind. One is clarity, what you want to get out of this engagement. That's really important. Commitment is really important because someone is spending time with you. And then clear communication is really important. So, clarity, communication, and commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, mentoring is rewarding, so rewarding to help someone else
Mhm.
and fulfilling. So thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking with you. Before we part ways, where can people find you, Monica?
People can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active. That is the only social media I follow. And I learn a lot and I contribute a lot.
Perfect. Yeah, I love LinkedIn as well. I'm there also all the time. So I'll put your your LinkedIn URL on the show
Sure.
notes. Thank you so
Sure.
much for being here today. It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Lenore. It has been a pleasure to talking to you. And Happy New Year once again.
Happy New Year. Yeah. Thank you for listening to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. This is your host, Limor Bergman Gross, and I want to encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Limor Bergman, and let me know, what do you think about the episodes? Feel free also to comment on Apple Podcasts and tell me, what do you want me to talk about? Which guests do you want me to bring? I really appreciate that, and have a wonderful day.